Ah, so this is great because I don't have to do anything except talk.
Great.
And I tend to not look too awful. No, that's okay. Yeah, so a quarter of an hour ago, we discovered that I hadn't brought my laptop with me. And I didn't know I was supposed to bring a laptop to a thing that needs a laptop. So I'm not quite sure what that says about me. But we got through. We got through. So today I'm going to do an introductory part one of hopefully a series on how psychologists do things. I'm not a registered psychologist currently. I did train as a psychologist, but at the moment I'm starting research on a PhD, which is looking at the personal experience, the lived experience of imposter phenomenon. Anyway, so today I want to talk about how psychologists find out, and there's two parts to that. There is how psychologists in a particular mode of working find out about a person that they're working with, and how they might motivate that person to do things which they might not otherwise be willing to do. So there's a few tricks of the trade, I guess, but it's more fundamental than that. So the core thing about the training that I had in psychology, which is counseling psychology, is the core conditions which are needed for what we call therapeutic change. And this is really the basis of conversation. And conversation is the basis of understanding and motivation, I suppose. So I've called this funneling with motivational interviewing without transference, which I'll explain in a second. The particular mode of psychology which I come from is called person-centered humanistic psychology. It's counseling psychology. So the three core conditions for therapeutic change, excuse me looking down, I'm looking at my notes as well, which is why I have to wear these funny glasses, are congruence, unconditional positive regard, and accurate and empathic understanding. So I think we're on to the next slide. Now, there we go, look at that, how to communicate. Keep going, and let's get through to the next one. Right, so congruence. Congruence is genuineness. And really what we're looking for here is an experience when people communicate that people really get you. If you've ever had a conversation with somebody and you feel that they really get you and they truly relate to how you feel, that's accurate and empathic understanding. And it comes from these three core conditions. So setting up these core conditions when you're going to have an important conversation, or when you first meet someone, or when you've got something you want to put across, or you have a difficult situation to deal with, these are what I'm suggesting, and what the science suggests are the conditions that you need. So congruence is the inner experience and the outward expression match. So the experience you have inside you matches what you're seeing and experiencing outside of you. And congruence comes from being skillfully real. You can't be authentic. You either are authentic or you're not. But when I say skillfully, I mean not over disclosing, and bearing in mind that what you're trying to do is communicate with another person as opposed to tell them things, and it's a very different thing. So the best way to get this down pat, the best way to really get this to work for you is to practice it. And that's where the funneling comes in. We'll get to that. So it's also good to say that you're not prepared to disclose something to somebody, which it's better than fudging an answer. People will spot when you fudge an answer that there's things that you leak. People leak information in their body language, in their tone of voice, in their facial expressions, in their demeanor, in how they sit, what speed they're talking at. All of those things leak, and babies can spot it. So grown-ups certainly do spot it, and it gives them an uneasy feeling. It gets in the way of communication. Displaying authenticity shows trustworthiness, but over-disclosing can cause alarm. And setting up a congruent situation with people when you're discussing things with them is what we call in psychology the therapeutic relationship. And the therapeutic relationship is the most important part of psychology. So having unconditional positive regard is absolutely vital. I'll say that slowly. Unconditional positive regard. It means that no matter who you're talking to, what history you've got with them, what they might look like when you first encounter them, what's gone on before, in that moment and in that conversation and in that interaction, you assume that they're actually trying to do their best. So that's unconditional positive regard. You have a positive regard towards that person and you're ready to receive their information and to communicate. It's something which needs to be practiced. It's something which needs to be consciously decided on, that that's what you're going to do. And in unconditional positive regard, it is vital not to evaluate or judge the information being gathered. You're not entering into a battleground with somebody, for instance. You are gathering information and you're not going to judge it. You are going to, your purpose for being there is to understand and nothing else. Each person is accepted in unconditional positive regard for the value of who they are. And no one must feel the possibility of judgment or rejection. All of those things get in the way of free-flowing conversation. And accurate and empathic understanding is the understanding of the other person's experience and feelings in an accurate and compassionate way. This is why unconditional positive regard towards somebody is so important. You can't have compassion if you don't regard them positively to start with, no matter what the situation is. And it's how therapists, it's how psychologists manage to have conversations with everybody in the same way. Each person's expression is theirs and it belongs to them. It's subjective. And it's important that once you've allowed somebody to give their subjective views on things, that you reflect, and we'll come on to reflection in a minute, to make sure that they feel that you've understood them. So, funneling, this actually came from, I learned this 20 years ago when I was roughly first involved in sales. Funneling is a process by which you start with wide open questions and get down to what's important to people. And I'm mixing this up with a psychological practice called motivational interviewing, for reasons I'll explain in a minute. So to funnel is to find out, and motivational interviewing is to persuade. So the first part is to engage, and to engage with people. Then, no, we're not. Thanks, Liz. To engage with people, the way to do this is to ask open, non-specific questions. Questions which can't be answered with a yes or a no or a single word answer. And having asked those questions, shut up and listen. What you're listening for is what I call mini funnels. Also listen for the type of language which is being used. There's three modes of language, which are visual, aural, hearing, and kinesthetic, so feeling. And examples of open-ended questions, open-ended non-specific questions are, tell me about yourself, which is a great one. Tell me about yourself in an open conversation like a networking event, and then shut up is invaluable. What do you find useful about? How do you find? And how would you describe are all examples of open-ended, non-specific questions. And when you're getting the answers, a technique which it needs to be practiced, it feels a bit odd to begin with, is to use joining words and sounds, by which I mean, okay. Oh yeah, go on. That sort of thing. It keeps the flow going. You're not attempting to interrupt somebody. You're not attempting to second guess them. You're not looking to jump to the answer straight away. This isn't a whodunit that you're looking at and you're trying to figure out who the murderer is 10 minutes in. This is letting somebody tell you what's important to them. And that's where we get to the mini funnel. So the next slide, Brian, since I'm not working this, is focus. Focus is where we get to closed non-specific questions, and these are the mini funnels. And you continue the language style, by which I mean, once somebody has let you know that they are a visual person, they will say things like, I see this, I take the long view, that's short-sighted, or they may say, I get a feeling for such and such, I can't get a handle on it, that's a kinesthetic person. Continue to use that style in your conversation with them, because there's no need to translate it. The information from you to them will flow more easily. If you've got somebody that's kinesthetic, who feels things and gets a handle on things, and you keep saying, what do you see? There's a disconnect. There's a slight need for translation, and that gets in the way of the conversation. So in focus, and this is really important, and this is where transference comes in, which was in the title. It's vital when we're looking at the mini funnels that you that you avoid transferring situations and people you've encountered onto the current situation. That's what's called in psychology transference. It's a Freudian term, and there's plenty of Freudian terms, and we can come onto those in later webinars, I'm sure, I think. So transference is you're talking to somebody and they remind you of someone, and you have you've got a flood of information that this person is like that person, and you expect things from them. You're then no longer being congruent. You're then no longer in the moment with them. You've decided what style of answers they've got, and you've probably already decided a lot of things about them, which you haven't found out yet, which isn't going to help. So big transference is a big topic, but it's to be avoided. So a mini funnel is, as you're listening to people, they will tell you, and if you're listening properly, you'll notice, they'll tell you things which are important to them. And those are the things which you want to go back to and ask questions like, you mentioned, tell me about, what's your outlook? How do you feel about? And you're naming the thing which you've noticed which is important to them. What are you hearing? You notice that those are 3 different styles of questioning. There's 3 different types of language. Once the person you're talking to is talking about those things which are important to them, then it's important to reflect to them that you've understood. Reflection is really, and it does feel odd when you first try it, which is why in psychology we sit in pairs and we practice this during our training. Reflections are really important, because that's how the person knows that you really get them, that you have listened, that you've noticed what's important to them, and that you are reflecting it to them. So a reflection of a topic, so if a way of saying that is, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is, what you're feeling is, what you're hearing is, don't ham it up and repeat it for each mini funnel. Typically you'll get 1, maybe 2, 3 mini funnels out of an open conversation if you're not trying to motivate somebody to do something in particular. So if we come on to evoke, we're getting through this fairly quickly, and I was hoping to get questions. We're on to the stage now where we're looking to motivate somebody to do something. So this is really useful. In psychology, it's used a lot with addiction. So I went on to do postgraduate work in addiction, which is a whole different field, because it really is getting people to do what they otherwise would never do in a million years, which is stop the thing they are doing. But in a business sense, if there is something which you're trying to get across, or you want somebody to do, or has proved difficult, or is a stumbling block, then at this point, when they feel that they've been understood, they feel that you get them. And you do, because you've used the technique, which means that you do understand and you do get them. Then you can move on to evoking some participation in that which you want to happen. So there's a big thing to be aware of in this, and don't be discouraged by this. Psychologically, and I don't have the piece of research which said this, but I did hear it in class. People are twice as likely not to do something as to do something. they're twice as motivated by the fear of loss as they are by the prospect of gain. So getting people to change what they're doing is not easy, and that's why they pay salespeople a lot of money. Also avoid discord. If you get into, once you get into this stage and you're trying to motivate somebody to do something that you want them to do, if the conversation that you're having begins to sound or feel like an argument, then you're getting it wrong. And at that stage, you have to go back and reconsider the fundamental conditions which we talked about beforehand at the beginning. So usually what's happening there is you haven't honestly decided to consider that person with unconditional positive regard. You still have some prejudgment about that person which is hanging over you, and it's getting in the way of the flow of the conversation. So encouraging change planning is agreeing with resistance but suggesting that there could be a better way. And we do this a lot with motivational interviewing, and especially in terms of dealing with addiction. So by that I mean such things as, I can see that, or I hear that, or I feel that this might not be easy, and I understand that it might not be easy. But if you could, ... out of 10, how difficult might it be to the thing which you want them to do? So it could be change the way they do something. It could be get them to go and talk to someone. It could be something you're selling. It could be a product or service. It could be something you want them to stop doing. But how out of 10, how difficult would that be? And how would it be if we could change it? How would that feel? Having made that leap, how does that feel? How does that look? How does that sound? So yes, I can see that might not be easy, but might it be better if the situation? So just changing that up. It's an understanding of the difficulty and moving the situation or the conversation onto, but hey, what would it look like if it was like this? So it's a gentle thing, and it's not adversarial. It's moving with the person that you're with, that you're joining with in the conversation. So another example of evoking questions is, I understand why. I understand why it's difficult. I understand why you haven't done that. Yeah, I can see that. I can understand that. I can get a handle on that. I can hear why that's difficult. But perhaps we could think about things this way. Perhaps you could see it like this, or you could. How would it be if it felt this way? It's those three modes, and it's an understanding with an invitation to do something different, and to start in the other person, the experience emotionally for them of things already having changed, already they have done something. It's taking away fear. It's an understanding that we're moving to a different place, but it's nice and gentle. And if that was possible, this is a gentle question, would you be interested? Now, having been through, I get you, I've listened to you, I've reflected what you've said, and I've understood you. I've gently suggested that things might be better if they were different. Would you be interested? And that's a closed question, and we're at the bottom of the funnel, and closed questions can be at the bottom of the funnel. You do need to know at that point whether or not the person that you're dealing with has actually moved, is prepared to continue a conversation, has felt that the interaction has been positive, has been useful. And we move from there to planning and formulation. I think there's another, yeah, there is, look at that. So the next steps come from the mini funnels. You can create a mini funnel as well. The mini funnel could be something which you want somebody to do, or somebody to buy, or a conversation, as I say, that you would like them to have. So don't be afraid of introducing your own ones and using a sort of reverse technique, but that's slightly another subject. So confirm that the good outcomes might be expected. These are rounding up the points. At this point, it's a good idea to confirm, having got somebody to a situation where they're prepared to think about doing things differently, or prepared to think about having a conversation or something of that nature, then confirm what good expectations may come out as a consequence of them doing that. And agree to do X by Y. That's a basic business thing. Agree when you're going to talk again. Agree that even if it's vague, what you'll do. And if possible, by when. Who will do what by when. And what I've left the last question on this is, if you're negotiating, and this kind of conversation is often a negotiation, but if you're negotiating, a really good stance for somebody who is leading the negotiation to take is, if you specific, then I will general. That's really powerful in negotiation. I've used it over and over again. You're committing to nothing. If you say, I will generally. So if you go and have that conversation that you've agreed is a good idea, if you go and have that conversation with so-and-so by Tuesday next week, then I generally will see what I can do about something, which commits the other person to something. It's a motivation. It doesn't commit you to anything, but it does make them feel that you're doing something too. Possibly the most important, and there is no slide for this, possibly the most important part of the whole funnel is sweeping up. Sweeping up question. I can't overemphasize the importance of a sweeping up question. The sweeping up question is there anything you think I've missed? The first time I used this, having been trained to do it, I was sent to talk to a financial advisor. I was working for an investment and insurance company who did retirement planning as well. And I was sent there to talk to him about company pension schemes. So I had that conversation because that's what I had to do. And at the end I said, David, is there anything you think I've missed? And he said, you're an investment guy, right? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, well, I've got this case which is before the courts, and it's a medical malpractice claim, and it's worth millions. Can you write me the report? And if you do, I'll give you the business. And I think it was the biggest single case I'd had up to then. It turned out to be £1.4 million. Quite a difference. So the sweeping up question is really, really important. And it can often lead you back to another mini funnel, in which case you repeat the process. You may have missed it. It may have come to them whilst they were talking, but anyway, you don't want to miss something which is important to someone. So that's basically it. That's all I've got to say on the subject for now.